Does this silhouette, I mean straight up panel of a previous Shadow Warrior commander, have any relations to a character we know? Ubel's sister, Lineo, Kanone, or is he a completely irrelevant character only used for exposition? As of chapter 147, after another hiatus, we learned quite a few things about the Shadow Warriors and can make some inferences about how they operate. But like their name, there are many mysteries that lie in the shadows. But most importantly, we know the Shadow Warriors' motive: to yeet the living grimoire, and can use that to help navigate much of what we don't know about them. But before we do, it's another week of the Frieren Manga hiatus. Yamada Kanehito and Abe Tsukasa are just chilling in bed, recovering ever so slowly from an undisclosed sickness, while all fans are holding their hands, wishing them blessings of good health from Kami-sama, but at the same time, desperately thinking of pulling a clematis. Get back the milking! Secretly, Yamada Kanehito has been going back and forth about what to do with the great mage Serie, the feet goddess! Once again, delivering another updated script to see what the not-so-immortal Serie thinks. And what it says is, the hiatus continues.
不合格だ。
As we later find out who is all a part of the Shadow Warriors. How do you become a Shadow Warrior? From what we know, everyone's origin story is about being orphaned at some point, likely due to war. You either become Fern or bloodthirsty, angry Fern. Okay, depending on the type of priest you come across. You either come across a clematis type that wants to use and abuse you into being a deadly assassin, or you have a Hyther who uses and tricks Frieren into basically adopting you. No matter what, you'll come across a corrupt priest. On a serious note, lots of Frieren's themes hinge on the idea of the nurturing side. While there is no real parent to be found, well, I guess there was that noble guy that did the reverse orphan, there are authority figures that help replace that parental role. From a storytelling side, there are characters like Stark and Fern who became orphans and just so happened to come across the best adult figures they could have come in contact with to become decent human beings. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you have your Clematises, your Leiras that help lead Commander Reve and other orphans on this completely different path than what a Himmel the Hero would have wanted. If many Shadow Warriors are orphans, then who else makes up the Shadow Warriors? Or better yet, what other characteristics do these other Shadow Warriors have? Werlos, aka Razin, comes to mind, and Guerrilla Warrior, aka Christ, are other examples. Werlos was one of the Empire's greatest heroes that reclaimed a third of the land back from the demons. Now, only a select few know of him as the hero Razin. Gorilla Dub's character is one of the most interesting ones because he was an adventurer first and then met the antithesis that challenged everything he wanted to be like in Himmel the Hero, in Razin. The reason why Werlos and Gorilla joined the Shadow Warriors will likely have an answer at some point, but given the history of what we know about the characters, one just wants to fight epic battles, but he is long past his prime, 10 years to be exact. And as he was on the decline, it was about 8 years ago when he met Christ. Whether he resents being forgotten or not has yet to be determined. In Gorilla's case, his whole heroic ideals of being remembered forever was shattered with Werlos' character. Instead of being a hero that will be remembered forever, he became a hero that no one will ever remember. In Rattle's case, it seemed like they were all orphans as well. They were trained to be the Empire's assassins with their mission given from the commanders, whom we don't even know about and can only speculate. However, what this Shadow Warrior says here is a clue. I see a lot of names of people who have contributed to the Empire here. You don't need to know the reasons. Obviously, Frieren from the Party of Heroes should be the most surprising for someone that helped save the entire world. To me, I think the Shadow Warrior's motives are perfectly clear, especially when Commander Louvre reveals that he wants to eliminate all magic from the world. Humanity and demons alike will lose their mana and will be rid of magic. The laws of the world, rewritten in the time of myth, shall return to how they once were. Simply put, magic is a threat to humanity. People are getting too powerful, and by eliminating these all-powerful beings that use magic, especially elves that are basically immortal, they need to remove the threat before a Minas the Witch comes out of nowhere and nukes the entire town away. Within the Shadow Warrior ranks, it seems to be made up of people that don't really care about the reason behind their mission, unless you are already high up as a commander, like a Luv or even a Calametis. Which leads me to another question of how Commander Lo, aka Helt, from the Southern Lands, and Lyra, the strongest warrior in the Southern Lands during his time, all became a part of the Shadow Warriors. During Flame's era, the Empire included much of the Southern Lands, but present day, much of what is happening there is vague. Besides, everyone is just at war. To be honest, much of the status of the entire continent is vague, including the empires, in which the Emperor pretty much explained that they are on a decline. We weren't really privy to this until this arc, in the Foundation Festival arc. So, how Commander Reve became Governor General of Lorbeer, which is located in the far north of the Empire, when he is from the Southern Lands. How is that even possible? Well, we know that the Shadow Warriors have been around since the age of the Unified Empire to counteract mages. So that means they've been around for at least several hundred years to even 1,000. So basically, at least whenever Flame was alive, and especially when she taught humans across the globe how to use magic. During that time, the Empire had much of the Southern Lands in their possession, which naturally makes the link between regions a lot more reasonable of how Commander Luv and Lyra can become a part of the Empire. The Shadow Warriors are so old and have been around for so long, which gives some fan theory credence that someone that could have been running it for so long could be an elf. A demon? That is where we can insert another mysterious secret organization in the Court of the Sacred Staff that has the same holy symbol as Frieren's. Frieren is supposed to be the last great mage with that holy emblem, but a secret organization is a secret organization for a reason. Essentially, what I'm saying here is that secret organizations that have lasted since the Unified Empire, meaning several hundred years at least, don't just go away, along with the generations upon generations of connections. In chapter 139, we already witnessed that Calametis is willing to give up his spot, with Lore being the next commander. So they are all unified somehow by some goal or some person. That leads me to ask more questions of how they continue to exist for so long if they are led by commanders that eventually just do their own thing. How do the Shadow Warriors move from commander to commander? If they are rogue that disbanded 16 years prior, how are they still operating in such a cohesive manner? And so to reiterate, it has to be centralized in some way, meaning that potentially this direction of the Shadow Warrior commanders have been forming for centuries before the Shadow Warriors worked and operated under the Empire. Even though the Shadow Warriors have significant authority to use force and yeet people on a list without even telling the Emperor, somebody has to be telling somebody to do something to achieve a goal, right? So once again, I believe it's either a person or a group of people, or everyone is centralized to achieve this certain goal, which could just be to protect the people or protect the Empire, right? That is where the fan theory of an elf like Minas the Witch being behind the assassinations became so popular. And there is that looming Court of the Sacred Staff mystery that will likely provide many answers to our Shadow Warrior questions. When it comes to the Shadow Warriors and what was explained in chapter 138, much of the Shadow Warrior lore, timeline, and mysteries stem from this chapter. About 16 years ago, the previous Emperor disbanded the Shadow Warriors because, you know, they just keep yeeting people out of nowhere. Notice that within those 16 years, there was turmoil caused by the late Emperor's succession dispute. Several commanding officers lost their positions, and those operations vanished into thin air right along with them. Per Werlos, whatever that previous Emperor knew about the Shadow Warriors probably died with them, which makes this younger Emperor a bit more ignorant to the shadows. Even Serie asked if he could call off the hit against her, but he basically said he was worthless. This makes me believe that the Shadow Warriors are centralized and coordinated in some way from the top. Even Commander Luv sees himself as a pawn in the grand scheme to eliminate magic. Ultimately, it is feeling more and more like a shadowy figurehead that is ultimately becoming more and more likely the real emperor that is pulling the strings. For the Shadow Warriors to last this long, it becomes more circumstantial evidence that either an elf or a demon could be running things, or people are just super devoted to that one goal across multiple generations. Now we're kind of in that deeper Shadow Warrior lore territory. During chapter 138, it showed the previous emperor, and then it showed the silhouette of some Shadow Warriors. It could mean absolutely nothing, as just simple exposition, some lore building, but it also could mean much more, as one of the older Shadow Warrior commanders that existed over 16 years ago. As Sense is reading off Lineo's report, it's important to take into account the flashbacks we get to see, in which it is implying that this Shadow Warrior commander was one of the reasons why they were disbanded. That eventually leads us to this Shadow Warrior commander in the flashback being fully revealed. Well, I guess we get the side shot. It's not a mistake that Yamada Kanehito and Abe Tsukasa created another character with super duper long hair that just so happens to potentially tie into other big Frieren mysteries that has super duper long hair in a similar style as them. Like whatever Ubel is trying to find out about her older sister, Lineo and Kanone. They all have similar hair types, and if you already believe that Lineo and Kanone are the same person, then this potential connection of Kanone to the previous Shadow Warrior commander becomes pretty damn mind-blowing. Remember that Lineo went undercover 1 year right after the Shadow Warriors got disbanded. As of right now, it doesn't mean that much if the commander has an actual connection to a Ubel's sister, or Lineo Kanona. This arc feels like it's going to be a while to finish, and we have way more questions than we do have answers, especially when it comes to the Shadow Warriors. So with this ongoing hiatus, the web of mysteries just keep expanding. This is basically how Yamada Kanehito and Abe Tsukasa left us, in the dark.